What was the monolith supposed to represent in 2001: A Space Odyssey? Well, clearly the most common answer is it's sort of the progressor of evolution. But I think we often leave it at that. We often say, oh, okay, right, we went from sort of non-thinking animals to humans in that moment where we were able to use tools. But we don't often think about the sort of cognitive process that's occurring behind that and what the externality of the monolith is supposed to represent. Tools symbolize creation. That is one of their inherent. They're a means to an end, and in being able to create tools, what we do is we put something. We accept that our ends exist, and as a result, we have to work backwards from those ends to fashion reality in such a way to bring them about. So when we create something, and in this moment where monkeys develop tools, that is the birth of creation, we reach the point where we accept that our internal reality is not yet matching the external reality, but we also accept that we will begin to go about trying to bring it about, whereas before there's the friction, but there's nothing happening between the two. It's sort of just an acceptance that one will flow into the other in the out, whereas the invention of tools sort of says, no, there is this final end and I am going to work towards it. And work is the key word there. It requires not just effort, but a degree of pain, because when we create something, we have the anguish, as I spoke about in the previous video, that the external reality doesn't match who we are. And in the Bible, this is represented by the apple of knowledge, because what is the apple of knowledge called? It's the fruit that allows us to discern the difference between good and evil. And in eating that, we distance ourselves from ourselves. So in Eden, which is essentially the animal state in reality, we are kind of blissfully unaware of the fact that there is distance. And when we eat the apple, we do get closer to God, which is the irony of the fall, because in eating the apple, we distance ourselves from ourselves, but we do become a little bit more like God, because God is distanced from himself as well. God is distanced between himself in the act of creation and then in the unfolding of creation. God wouldn't be able to create reality if he wasn't able to distance himself from himself. And so we become a bit like God, but that's where the fall happens, because we immediately realize we're nothing like God, because we fail to bring about our own reality. We so often try and it isn't immediately there. I want to do something, but I fail to do it. And so this starts the slow human effort to reclaim Eden. But importantly, the fall was good, because it means that when we reclaim Eden, when we're able to create Eden, we ourselves have reached salvation, have reached the point of God, whereas prior to the fall, we were merely given Eden rather than creating it. And if you were to sort of follow this metaphoric interpretation of the Bible to its natural conclusion, you'd look at the New Testament and you'd say, what does the life of Jesus and the salvation of man in that story represent? And Jesus's fundamental trait is forgiveness, because forgiveness has to exist side by side in the mode of creation in order for it to keep going, in order for it to build a better reality than the one that is in our mind. Because as we spoke about before, creation is an inherently shameful act. But if you are able to forgive yourself for creating, and for creating something that isn't as divine as it was in your mind, you're actually closer to the divine by at least trying to instantiate that thing, rather than just reaching a point where you go, oh, everything I make is useless and it is an impure, imperfect version of how I imagined it. As a result, I'll just stop. You have to forgive yourself and keep going. And that is how you reclaim Eden as man. And that is what the monolith represents, is it sort of represents the drivers of evolutionary change, yes, but if you were to take it in its two separate modes in which it is shown in the film, in the first instance, it allows man to understand that his end is achievable by him, and that he must distance himself from himself through the use of tools, through the use of means, to then slowly begin to close that gap. But he has to create the gap in the first place to then start to close it, because before then he's merely been given everything, and he needs to take it. And then in the second instance, when we sort of become the space baby, you could argue that it's the transformation that occurs in the New Testament, where we realize that the only way we will get somewhere is through forgiveness, and forgiveness transcends us to a childlike state, because childhood, which is Eden, is full of constant forgiveness, because you are not even sure you are a human, and in your innocence, you forgive yourself through play. Play is a mode of creation which is devoid of shame, which is why we become a baby, a big space baby, because it's a sort of cosmic consciousness which exists in the form of play. Anyway, that's kind of what I think the monoliths represent.